Hi everybody, this is Dee at Aloha Astro, and I would just like to open up a few things here for us to look at as we take a look at Mercury going retrograde in the cardinal fire sign of Aries, and that occurs this evening. I think it's about 7:20 Eastern time that this occurs. And if we look over here at planetwatcher.com, where we can look at the present transits on a daily basis, we can see that here is planet Mercury with its little, I like to think of it as antenna up on the top of its head here, at 16 degrees of Aries, and it is conjunct the planet Venus. As Venus begins to move forward over the next few weeks and continues on in Aries, Mercury is going to be retrograding and separating from Venus. So if you have something to say to loved ones or something that is really on your mind that you need to communicate, I would say now is the time, because if you let things slide as the days go on, the feelings that can be generated by Mercury and Venus being conjunct may begin to wane a bit, or you may lose your nerve. You may not feel as though you should communicate. So if something needs saying, you might want to get it out in the open today, even if it causes some sort of disturbance, since these two planets are making a square to Pluto in Capricorn. So rather than bury something that's intense and deep, I would suggest that you bring it up now to get it out in the open, and then during the course of Mercury retrograde, which occurs beginning today on March 22nd and ends on April 15th, there can be time for rethinking or talking about things further or going back over. A lot of times clients come to me right around the Mercury retrograde time period whenever it occurs, and it seems that issues with relationship will come up. Sometimes there will be breakups. Very often it's a timeout time. So if you are having some time out right now, I wouldn't consider it an absolute end. The influence of the Aries energy is very self-directed. Aries is a sign that says I am, and it rules the first house. Let's see if I can get the image up that I just found to let us take a look at the houses. So here we can see the houses, and they are numbered counterclockwise, 1 through 12. Aries rules the first house, and it has a lot to do with your outward appearance, how other people see you, how you present yourself. And the thing that Aries says is, I am. Now, in astrology, whenever something's going on one side of the chart, it creates a pull on the other side. And literally as above, so below astrologically. So when the first house is being emphasized by something like Mercury retrograde, then whatever sits opposite is also going to be impacted by that transit. So while we have Mercury going backwards, or appearing as though it's going backwards, in that first house, very self-aware I am energy, it's going to be activating the issue of relationship, because we are one and part of a partnership. It's more than just one person. We need that mirroring that goes on. So self is in the first house, partner or other is in the 7th house, and these issues are going to come up primarily at this time around whether you are either getting your needs met or if you're being too selfish. It really comes down to one or the other, and attempting to find a balance or strike some sort of a compromise between yourself and another person. This does not always have to be romantic. This can be any type of a relationship where you spend a lot of time together, or where you need to deal one-on-one with somebody. And it's not always easy to both have our needs met and feel satisfied and also be giving to the other party. But during the retrograde time period, if you can spend time on looking at relationships and how you behave in them, or what you expect from them, or what kind of a partner you are, how you relate to other people, that might be part of what the retrograde is about. Now, we are not all going to have this planet retrograding in our first house. Over here, this is my chart, and you can see that I do not have Aries on my first house. I have Gemini energy over here. This is my rising sign or my ascendant. So where do we find Mercury? It's right up here. These are the transits around the outer edge of the chart wheel. And here's Mercury and Venus very close to my moon in my 11th house. So friends, groups, organizations, the internet, places where people gather, the future, my popularity, fame, or success, wish fulfillment, wherever I take creativity and bring it out to more people, how I deal with larger groups or organizations, or how they deal with me. Those are things that will be highlighted for me during Mercury retrograde. And I'll run through the houses now for all of the signs. So if you know your rising sign, that would be the most important thing for you to be considering right now in terms of Mercury in Aries retrograding. So I will be going through the houses from the perspective of which house you would be having Mercury move through. And of course, this can be approximate because we don't know the exact sign and degree of your ascendant. But if you do know your rising sign, and also if you know your sun sign, mix some of that Aries I am and self-aware energy into the house that I mentioned for your rising sign or your sun sign. So if you are a sun sign Aries, rising sign Aries, then you are going to be dealing primarily with that self issue, your own plans, how you present yourself. That can be on the physical level as well, how other people see you. Now, Taurus, as we move on to Taurus energy, which Taurus will have the 12th house of the chart active. So Taurus will be dealing with things that have more to do with spirituality, traditionally places like prisons and hospitals and ashrams, retreat centers, rehabilitation centers. On the material level, it can be places of spirituality, retreat, or healing. And on the level of consciousness, this would be a house where we connect with other planes of existence or go deeply inside ourselves. So Taurus would be dealing with some of that and doing it from the perspective of their own personal mission. Then we move on to Gemini energy and Gemini rising sign or Gemini sun sign. And as you saw, I have a Gemini rising, so my 11th house was very active with the Mercury retrograde. This has to do with the friends, the groups, organizations, aspirations and goals, wish fulfillment, and yes, the internet, because that's where lots of people gather. And as we move on to Cancer, we have the 10th house activated, where we look at career, reputation, authority figures, purpose, moving up the ladder, how you express yourself out there in the world and get seen and recognized as somebody who knows what they're doing. When we move on to Leo, you're going to have the 9th house activated with Mercury retrograde. This has to do with where you gather or share information and experiences, whether it's through education, learning, teaching, or travel. This can be a seeking house, a house of seeking. So being on your own personal quest or figuring out that maybe you need to go back to school. These may be issues that would come up for Leo. Virgo, you are going to be dealing with 8th house with Mercury retrograde, and you may have to be very careful of your finances right now that are shared with other people or when you report to the government, and you may need to go back over your paperwork and possibly set up boundaries between you and somebody else when it comes to shared assets and resources. Or if you have been lax about taking care of money for business and you haven't been maintaining good records, then this would be the time you need to go back over something like that. Also, if you have applied for money in the past and been denied, it can be a good time for you to go back into applying for something again, because this is where we receive money that is not necessarily ours in terms of dollar per hour that we've earned. Libra, you will be looking at your 7th house in terms of one-on-one relationships, and very similar to what Aries and Aries rising will be dealing with, you also will be dealing with where you stand in partnership, what you are getting out of your relationship, and are your needs being met? Are you being a good partner? Do you need to rework your relationship in some way? Some people do seek out partners from the past during a retrograde like this, in the 7th house in particular. For everybody in general, because that relationship axis is being activated during this Aries retrograde, Mercury in Aries retrograde, and because of its pull toward Libra, many people may either break up, get back together again, or seek out partners from the past. And if you do return to a partnership from the past, I would say communicate and negotiate, and make sure you do not set up the same pattern that caused it to end in the past. So clarity in communication would be something to strive for everybody during Mercury retrograde, but particularly if you are a sun sign Aries or Libra. Now we go on to Scorpio. Scorpio, you are going to be looking at your health, your daily habits, exercise, nutrition, your job that pays the bills, how you serve others, how you improve yourself. Are you thinking about the woulda, coulda, shouldas of maybe self-employment in the past, or some other job opportunity that slipped away? You might want to go back over your work plans and perhaps return to a job that you worked before, or some other work project that you set aside. It may be a good time to go back into that. Sagittarius, your 5th house. Well, everybody loves the 5th house. This is children, creativity, romance, fun. This is where we play. This is where it feels really good to be human. So for Sagittarius, the fun at this time is to perhaps resume dating somebody you've dated in the past, or if you have been not spending as much time with your children, to reconnect with your children. If you've set aside a creative project, you might want to go back over that creative project and get back into it again. Capricorn, the 4th house, home, family, your psychological foundations and roots, the things that you believe or know to be true. You may be dealing with issues literally around the house, the roof over your head, where you live, whether you want to stay where you are. Maybe it would be good to rearrange furniture or improve a home rather than move. So I would say looking at the pros and cons of the actual physical space where you are living, or where you might consider moving to. If you have any parental concerns, or dealing with your parents, or if you are questioning whether you want to become a parent, that might be something that Mercury retrograde brings up for you. Aquarius, you will be dealing with 3rd house, and 3rd house brings the focus on formative ideas, your social connections in your local neighborhood, and your brothers and sisters, people you treat like brothers and sisters, how you self-promote, where you make contacts that are going to advance you in the community, making acquaintances, imagination, self-promotion, local trips. These are all 3rd house things. So perhaps you have some ideas or plans that you've looked at before, studied a little bit, started a program, didn't finish, whatever. It could be time to get back into that and see what you can salvage from that and start it back up again. If you have fallen out of touch with siblings, or you've withdrawn within your local neighborhood or community, it may be time to get back together again with the people locally who could be supporting you in your efforts in life, or to be remembering your connection with your siblings. Pisces, you'll be looking at money and personal values, your own personal finances. And if you merge your money with other people, because of this opposition to the 8th house where we share money, if you are looking at how you share your resources with other people, or perhaps if you're dating somebody and you have certain money values, and let's say you take care of your finances, but they do not take care of theirs the same way, you might want to reconsider what you see going on in terms of how people care for their money, how you care for your money. What does it say about you in how you spend your money and how you treat your money? Or what does it say about somebody that you are intimate with or involved with that you might be thinking of more seriously if you are coming to the point where you're not just dating anymore? Maybe you're thinking of moving in together. You might need to go over the rules of the relationship from the financial perspective and the things that are important to you in terms of your finances. This can also be a house of self-worth and self-esteem and how you feel about yourself. So in the very self-aware I am Aries energy with Mercury retrograding in the 2nd house for you, you would be having to look at whether you make enough money, charge enough money, feel worthy to receive. That might be something that you would be looking at if you are a Pisces sun sign or rising sign. So for everybody in general, Aries is going to highlight I am. And for everybody individually, you look toward your rising sign and your sun sign in terms of house rulerships to see what kind of mixture of energy you would get. So I hope that helps you a bit with the idea here behind Mercury retrograde. The usual cautions with Mercury retrograde I've outlined on my site in today's daily horoscope. You want to clean up your paperwork today, your desk, clear things out, check your calendar, get rid of unnecessary crap, and make sure your calendar has everything written down on it. You know, go through the loose papers, make sure you've written everything down or put it into your phone or wherever you store it, and double check things. Make sure all your appointments for the next few weeks are what you think they should be. And before you venture out into the world on anything that you've made appointments for, make sure that you double check and see that everything's still on and the person's going to be expecting you. Leave early. Allow time for delays. Allow time for the type of ridiculous things that Mercury retrograde can bring, like getting lost or flat tires or the road is closed or who knows. That's the thing. With Mercury, who knows? Sometimes there can be good things that come out of Mercury retrograde, such as meeting a new person or having some other serendipitous event occur because you got knocked off your normal track and you were going with the flow and making light of the situation so that you were in an open and receiving energy, and fortune brought you some new amazing person or some opportunity. A retrograde time period can do something like that. If you are going to grumble and moan and complain and get totally freaked out and stressed over the type of things that Mercury retrograde can bring, like misunderstandings in communication, lost communications, missed appointments, getting lost luggage. If you can't control these things anyway, why would you want to stress yourself out over it? Do what you can in advance. Be prepared. Make sure you've got your toothbrush with you and a granola bar or something, and chill. Take it easy. Always check vehicles before you get in them. Make sure they look sound. Or the tires inflated? Does it have oil? You know, these are things that are pretty basic, but something that we should do more of when we know that a planet that rules transportation and communication is up to stuff. So expect that you have to be on guard or aware, but that doesn't mean that you have to be cranky, crabby, angry, nasty, or anything like that. In fact, a good sense of humor can carry you through Mercury retrograde. Thinking that the best will come of it can actually open your mind up to thinking of the different perspectives that you could be using, and that is part of what the retrograde is good for. Retro literally meaning, isn't he handsome? Going back over things, reworking, rethinking, replanning, revisiting. Just put a re in front of it. Go back over it and do it again. There are many things that it's worth going back to and trying again, reconnecting, recreating. There's so much good that can come out of that retrograde. So it is not as terrible as some people would like us to think. Yes, some people have stories of horrendous things that happened during a Mercury retrograde, computers that died, cars that died. Maybe it was time for a new computer. Maybe it was time for a new car. We don't always hear the story that comes out at the other end of things when that person is now happy in their newer car or very pleased that they finally, had an excuse to go out and buy the new computer or the new phone. But there are certainly things that you can be aware of and watch for, such as, where is your phone? Have you lost it? Do you misplace it? Are you lazy about taking care of paperwork? Do you trust everything to your memory? During Mercury retrograde, you may be very distracted. Make lists, Maybe it's time to grow up and make lists instead of thinking you can carry it all in your head. So that's my advice for Mercury retrograde. And if you have any interest in what would be going on for you personally, I'm available for consultation through my website, where you just saw the wonderful statue of Mercury. And everybody be safe and take it easy in your travels. Like the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts, be prepared. Think about all the potential things that could delay you and double check everything before you head out the door, or before you make any assumptions. Ask somebody, don't assume anything. Talk to people. That's the other thing that Mercury retrograde can do, is we think that we know what's going on and we make assumptions and we don't communicate, and that's where the misunderstandings come about. So enjoy Mercury retrograde. I'll be back at the end of the month to talk about the full moon that's approaching, and so I will see you soon.